The following portion of Daytime Tri-Cities is sponsored by AFI, your financial North Star.
Well, this weekend we celebrate love and relationships, and with that in mind, we are talking money and marriage today. It is a big topic, and yet it is one of those things that a lot of couples will admit they don't like to talk about. Here with the truth about love and money is Peter Raber, president of AFI Advisors, your financial North Star. Peter, great to have you back on the show.
It's good to be back.
I love this topic because it's so true. It's really hard for couples to talk about money.
It is. It's one of those topics that's taboo in relationships. It's taboo growing up. Don't ask me about my money, Dad. Those type things. And when we look at the surveys, money fights are the second leading cause of divorce behind infidelity, but money fights really are very rarely about dollars and cents. And so when we see those things that come into our office, it's normally about a failure to communicate, and especially early on, about what that money means to someone. So the example I give a lot of people is when my wife and I first were married and we're trying to figure out who takes care of the money, who does whatever. I didn't like having a buffer in my checking account. That was money that should have been in the stock market, should have been growing. For her, that buffer created safety. It created a feeling that if the car went out, I've got the ability to take care of it. And that actually comes from her upbringing of knowing how important having a car was, and how important, she grew up in her mom and her together primarily, and so having that car was super important. Mm-hmm. And so that's the feeling that you've got to discuss, not, hey, I want to put $500 into this or something like that. You've got to get down to those root causes, and that can be really tough to be that vulnerable, especially even early in marriage.
Yeah, because we all have our experiences.
Right.
And that's, of course, shaped how we are. And when do you know when it's right to talk about money in the relationship? And I like how you said love is emotional. Don't mix that up.
Right.
It's logical.
The money side is logical. You can make the money work. And I really believe that. No matter what the situation, you can make the money work if you have those honest conversations up front. So if it's one of those things that, I would say if you're starting to move in together, start talking about money, because then it's who's paying for what bills. But definitely once you start to look at engagement, wedding, honeymoons, there's big price tags that go along with that. Right now the average engagement ring is running $6,000 in the United States. The average wedding, now this is down because of COVID, but was $22,500 last year. And that's down from $28,000, $29,000. Honeymoons are running $4,000 or $5,000. But those are averages, and I feel like a lot of times people look at those and say, I should spend that. Mm-hmm. If you can tie a thing, ribbon around, your finger and, get married by a friend in your backyard and then go away camping for the weekend and spend $100, but that's what works for your relationship, great. If you're expecting, Manhattan and a $100,000 wedding and $40,000 ring, that's different, but you have to have the conversation. And the unmet expectations of, hey, they should have known I wanted that, or they should have expected to save that. Mm-hmm. On top of just coming into a marriage, you throw all three of those together. If you're having to pay for them yourself because your family can't help out, you may be coming into marriage with $30,000 of debt. Mm-hmm. And that puts just stress. And you may come in with student loans, you may come in with all these other things. And it's all just stress that you don't need as you're even just trying to figure out, how do we work together?
Sounds like you really need to be honest with each other up front about those expectations.
Up front, and if you have those conversations early and often, they're not as big, because once you let them build up and build up and build up, it's like the test you didn't study for.
Yes.
So if you have that honest conversation often and about the little things, then the big ones really aren't that big. It's just a culmination of all the things that you've already talked about. But that's still being very hard to be that honest and open with someone where you're trying to say, we just got engaged. Do I want to talk about this now, or do I want to just wait and put it off? And just like everyone else, We put things off that we don't want to deal with. But we don't have to, and it would be so much better if we didn't.
Yeah, it makes it worse.
It really does.
Then you're trying to bring it up and find the right time. And speaking of, my last question is about Valentine's Day, because I was looking at the numbers and you were sharing some of it. Is crazy how much money we spend on Valentine's Day.
We're expecting, United States estimate is about $22 billion this year. Half of that being on candy, on jewelry, on flowers. The really crazy stat in all that is 43 million Americans last year got a Valentine's Day gift that they didn't want. And that was about $9.5 billion is the estimates. And the one thing that I know is, you don't get somebody a gym membership, you don't get somebody a vacuum cleaner, you don't do those things. But same thing, having those honest conversations versus saying, well, I know I need to do this, this, and this, so I'm going to do it, when they would prefer something else, or they just want time.
Yeah.
But it's a huge industry.
Oh my goodness. Peter, I have really enjoyed our conversation. Thanks so much for joining us today. Great insight. You got to have the conversation, people.
Got to talk.
All right, here is the information. If you would like to meet with Peter, you can find out more information by calling his office, or you can go to afiadvisors.com and check out the website.
The preceding portion of Daytime Tri-Cities is sponsored by AFI, your financial North Star.